Today's topic is what happens when you work one more year versus retiring 1 year sooner. So, at Diversified, we spend a lot of our time living and breathing in financial planning software. We model out thousands of scenarios for clients, and a lot of times it's do I retire at 62 or 63 or 63 or 64, and so on and so forth. So, it's interesting because I really get to see how it impacts the net impact for our clients at the end of the day. And of course, intuitively, if you work a year longer, your situation generally financially is better. Doesn't mean that should be the overriding concern always, because sometimes your situation's already great. And working next year just makes it greater, but that may not be the driving force for you, and nor should it be in all circumstances. But when you really sort of splice it apart and understand all the things that happen when you work one more year, I think it's worth discussing that today. So, first of all, what happens? Clearly, you have more income. So, in having more income, because you get it for an extra year, it allows you to do things with that income. For instance, you can pay down debts that are looming. You can take that income and you can pay for future big expenses. Maybe you buy that last car or do that last home remodel. And also remember, generally speaking, these are your highest earning years. So this income can be cut and sliced and diced many different directions. So you get one more year income. Next is saving. Again, these are generally your highest years of income and typically some of your lower years of expenses, because college is done for kids. They're typically out of the house. You've got a lot of these things off your payroll, and thus your expenses come down, your incomes are high, and a lot of times I see clients able to save tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars these last extra year or two of working. And that has a huge effect on a client's situation. The next is drawdown. So drawdown meaning you're delaying one more year of pulling assets out of your retirement assets, or pulling income out of your retirement assets. So let's assume that you retire at 65 or 64. Well, presumably you're expiring at, let's call it 90. That's one less year that you have to pull $100,000, $200,000 out of your assets, and that makes a major compounding effect here. Speaking of which, compounding, that's the next big thing. So typically speaking, this is your highest years of assets as well, your last few years. And so if you have $2 million saved, and not only are you able to save $100,000, $200,000 these last few years, or whatever it can be, but additionally, it's another year that, assuming markets are up, you can get a $200,000 return on those dollars, something of that nature. And again, that just piles on your existing $2 million if it grew 10%. And now you head into retirement with an extra year or two or three in the bank, and that compounding could be the difference that really keeps this thing growing or shrinking. The last thing I think worth mentioning is Social Security and Medicare. So if retiring before 65, working an extra year, typically you have health insurance, versus one of our clients' biggest fears is what do you do for health insurance in between retirement and Medicare? Well, it's one less year of that expense or that worry if you're working an extra year. And for Social Security, remember, you typically don't take it while you're working, especially if you're under 70 and covering your expenses. And in that situation, every year you wait to take Social Security, it increases roughly 8% a year. So it could be a big difference if you take Social Security at 63 because you need to, versus 64 versus 65, and so on. And so having that benefit of Social Security deferring and growing is also a huge benefit to working an extra year. So those are a couple of the things that we see impact, and sometimes it makes, and a lot of times it does make a big impact to the net figure at the end of the day. But then again, is that the most important thing to you or not? That's not for me to decide. That's for you to decide. But I thought I'd shed some light on what happens from a modeling standpoint when you work that extra year and or go a year earlier. Hope you enjoyed it. As always, I'm Andrew Rosen, President of Diversified. Stay wealthy, stay healthy, and stay happy. Bye, folks.